Germany unfolds like a storybook across Central Europe, offering travelers an extraordinary blend of medieval charm, natural splendor, and cosmopolitan energy. From the Baltic coastline to the Alps, this country presents landscapes and experiences that shift dramatically as you journey through its distinct regions. The morning mist settling over a Bavarian alpine lake creates an entirely different atmosphere than the golden light illuminating Baroque facades in Dresden. Yet both moments capture something essential about Germany's character. Starting in Bavaria, the region commands attention with its dramatic alpine scenery and architectural treasures. Füssen sits at the southern edge of the Romantic Road, where the landscape begins its ascent into the mountains. This small town has become synonymous with King Ludwig II's architectural dreams, most famously Neuschwanstein Castle. The castle rises from a rugged hilltop overlooking the Pölat Gorge, its white limestone towers and turrets creating a silhouette that seems pulled from collective imagination rather than practical medieval necessity. Ludwig designed this palace as a retreat and homage to Richard Wagner, constructing it in the late 19th century with a romanticized vision of what a knight's castle should represent. The throne room draws inspiration from Byzantine churches, while the Singers' Hall stretches across the fourth floor, designed for performances that rarely occurred during Ludwig's lifetime. Approaching Neuschwanstein requires either a steep uphill walk or a horse-drawn carriage ride through forested paths. The Marienbrücke, a bridge spanning the Pölat Gorge, provides the classic postcard view where photographers gather at dawn to capture the castle emerging from morning fog. Inside, the contrast between the austere exterior and lavishly decorated interior rooms reveals Ludwig's obsession with detail. The king's bedroom took over 4 years to complete, with woodcarvers creating intricate Gothic revival panels depicting scenes from Tristan and Isolde. Just across the valley, Hohenschwangau Castle presents a more intimate scale. Ludwig's father, Maximilian II, renovated this medieval fortress, and young Ludwig spent much of his childhood here. The rooms retain their 19th century appearance, with wall paintings depicting Germanic legends and historic events. From Hohenschwangau's windows, Ludwig could gaze across at the hill where Neuschwanstein would eventually stand, perhaps already imagining the palace he'd commission once he became king. Füssen itself deserves exploration beyond its famous neighbor. The old town clusters around the Lech River, where pastel-painted buildings lean into narrow cobblestone lanes. The former Benedictine monastery of Saint-Mang contains frescoes from the early 18th century, while the adjacent Prince's Wing houses a gallery displaying late Gothic and Renaissance paintings. Walking along the Lech River's edge, the rushing water creates a constant soundtrack, particularly dramatic, where it flows through the gorge at the southern end of town. The Forgensee, Germany's 5th largest lake, stretches north of Füssen, it providing a reservoir that partially drains in winter to protect downstream areas from flooding. Summer transforms it into a recreational haven where sailboats glide across blue-green waters with the Alps forming a backdrop. The lake's southeastern shore offers cycling paths that wind through meadows spotted with wildflowers from May through September. Traveling north along the Romantic Road, the landscape softens into rolling hills and river valleys. Rothenburg ob der Tauber emerges as perhaps the most perfectly preserved medieval town in Germany. Its walls, built between the 13th and 15th centuries, still encircle the historic core completely, with covered walkways allowing visitors to stroll along the ramparts and peer out from defensive towers. So the town survived the 30 Years' War through a legendary act involving the mayor drinking an enormous tankard of wine to appease invading forces, a story reenacted annually during the Meistertrunk festival. Rothenburg's streets seem designed to enchant. The Plön line, where 2 streets fork around a small triangular building with a fountain, creates one of Germany's most photographed corners. Half-timbered houses lean at slight angles, their upper floors projecting over the street level. Window boxes overflow with geraniums in summer, adding splashes of red against cream and timber-brown facades. The Christmas Museum operates year-round in several connected medieval houses, displaying ornaments and holiday traditions spanning centuries, while shops throughout the Old Town sell handcrafted decorations regardless of season. Street. Jakobschurch anchors the town with its Gothic architecture and the Heilig Blut altar, an elaborate carved altarpiece created by Tilman Riemenschneider in the early 16th century. The altar depicts the Last Supper with remarkable detail, each apostle's expression individually rendered in limewood. Climbing the bell tower of the town hall provides panoramic views across terracotta rooftops to the surrounding Tauber River Valley, where vineyards climb gentle slopes. The defensive walls stretch for over 2 kilometers, with numerous gates and towers marking entry points. Walking the ramparts at sunset, when day trippers have departed and golden light washes across the stones, offers a quieter appreciation of the town's medieval character. The gardens beyond the walls, as including the Burggarten where Rothenburg's original castle once stood, provide green spaces with views over the valley. Moving eastward across Bavaria, Munich asserts itself as a city that balances profound tradition with contemporary innovation. The Marienplatz serves as the central gathering point, where the new town hall's neo-Gothic facade dominates with its glockenspiel performance drawing crowds at 11 a.m. and noon. The mechanical figures reenact 2 events from Munich's history, including a jousting tournament held during the wedding feast of Duke Wilhelm V in 1568. The performance lasts about 15 minutes, and though decidedly touristy, watching locals pause alongside visitors to observe this daily ritual suggests its continued relevance to Munich's identity. From Marienplatz, lanes radiate toward various neighborhoods and attractions. The Viktualienmarkt sprawls across blocks that once hosted the city's main farmers' market, and while tourism has influenced vendor offerings, locals still shop here for produce, cheese, flowers, and prepared foods. Beer gardens within the market provide spaces to sit with a Weisswurst and pretzel, observing the flow of shoppers and vendors conducting business much as they have for generations. Munich's beer culture extends far beyond Oktoberfest, though that festival certainly represents its most famous expression. The beer gardens that dot parks and neighborhoods throughout the city operate according to time-honored traditions. Guests may bring their own food while purchasing drinks from the garden, sitting at communal tables beneath chestnut trees. The Englischer Garten, one of the world's largest urban parks, contains several beer gardens, including the Chinese Tower, where Wiens often play traditional Bavarian on weekend afternoons. The Eisbach, a man-made river flowing through the park, produces a standing wave where surfers ride year-round, even when snow covers the banks. The cultural institutions clustered around Königsplatz demonstrate Munich's commitment to arts and antiquities. The Glyptothek houses Greek and Roman sculptures in a neoclassical building designed specifically for their display. Across the square, the State Collection of Antiquities continues the classical theme, with vases, bronzes, and jewelry spanning ancient Mediterranean civilizations. The Pinakothek Museums, 3 separate buildings dedicated to different periods of European painting, contain works that range from medieval religious panels to 20th century avant-garde movements. The residence, former palace of Bavarian monarchs, occupies a massive complex in the city center. Room after room reveals the accumulated treasures and architectural styles favored by rulers from the Renaissance through the 19th century. The antiquarium, built in the 1560s to house Duke Albrecht V's collection of classical sculptures, stretches as an enormous vaulted hall painted with views of Bavarian cities and adorned with grotesque decorations. The treasury displays centuries of royal regalia, including crowns, swords, and religious objects crafted from gold, precious stones, and exotic materials. Nymphenburg Palace, situated west of the city center, served as the summer residence of Bavarian royalty. The Baroque Palace extends across a symmetrical facade, while the grounds contain smaller pavilions and an enormous park designed in both formal and naturalistic styles. The Marstall Museum within the palace complex displays ornate carriages and sleighs used for state occasions, including Ludwig II's gilded Rococo sleigh shaped like fantastical creatures. Dresden, positioned along the Elbe River in eastern Germany, presents a phoenix narrative. The Allied bombing of February 1945 destroyed approximately 80% of the city center, including Baroque masterpieces that had earned Dresden the nickname Florence on the Elbe. The reconstructed historic core now stands as both memorial and resurrection, with buildings painstakingly rebuilt using original plans and incorporating salvaged stones marked by fire damage. Yet the Frauenkirche's dome dominates Dresden's skyline once again, having been rebuilt between 1994 and 2005. The original church, completed in 1743, collapsed during the firebombing, and its ruins remained as a war memorial through the East German period. The reconstruction used computer modeling to map each surviving stone's original position, creating a facade where blackened sandstone blocks from the original structure interrupt the lighter new stone, forming a permanent patchwork that documents the building's history. Inside, the soaring dome creates a sense of weightlessness, with natural light flooding through windows onto white and gold galleries. The Zwinger Palace complex demonstrates the exuberance of Saxon Baroque architecture, built in the early 18th century as an orangery and garden pavilion for Augustus the Strong. It forms a courtyard surrounded by galleries that today house several museums. The porcelain collection displays over 20,000 pieces of Asian and Meissen porcelain, reflecting Augustus's obsession with collecting Asian ceramics and eventually establishing Europe's first porcelain manufactory in Meissen. The Old Masters Picture Gallery contains works by Raphael, Vermeer, and other European masters, most famously Raphael's Sistine Madonna with its iconic cherubs that have become ubiquitous in popular culture. Walking along the Bruhl's Terrace, a riverside promenade nicknamed the Balcony of Europe, the Elbe flows broad and steady below. River cruises depart regularly, offering perspectives on Dresden's skyline and journeys into the surrounding Saxon Switzerland region. The Elbe carves through sandstone formations upstream from Dresden, recreating a landscape of table mountains and deep valleys that German Romantic painters immortalized in the 19th century. The Semperoper, Dresden's opera house, represents another triumph of reconstruction. The original building by Gottfried Semper opened in 1841, burned in 1869, was rebuilt, and then destroyed again in 1945. The current incarnation, completed in 1985, hosts performances by the Sächsische Staatskapelle, one of the world's oldest orchestras. Tours during the day allow visitors to admire the neo-Renaissance interior even without attending a performance. Berlin operates on an entirely different frequency than Munich or Dresden. As Germany's capital and largest city, it sprawls across 892 square kilometers, with neighborhoods that maintain distinct identities despite urban continuity. The city wears its complex 20th-century history visibly, from the Reichstag's restored dome, designed by Norman Foster, to the remaining sections of the Berlin Wall that have become outdoor galleries and memorial sites. The Brandenburg Gate stands as Berlin's most recognizable landmark, its neoclassical columns topped by the quadriga sculpture of Victory driving her chariot. The gate has witnessed Napoleon's armies, Nazi torchlight parades, Cold War division, and reunification celebrations. Today it marks the boundary between the Tiergarten Park and the beginning of Unter den Linden, the grand boulevard extending east toward Museum Island. Museum Island sits in the Spree River, a UNESCO World Heritage Site comprising 5 museums built between 1830 and 1930. The Pergamon Museum, currently undergoing extensive renovation, houses monumental architecture from ancient civilizations, including the Ishtar Gate of Babylon, with its brilliant blue glazed bricks depicting lions and dragons. The Neues Museum displays the bust of Nefertiti, the 3,300-year-old limestone sculpture discovered in Egypt in 1912. The Alts Museum, designed by Karl Friedrich Schinkel, presents Greek and Roman antiquities in a rotunda inspired by the Pantheon. The collection density across these institutions could occupy days of concentrated viewing. The East Side Gallery preserves the longest remaining section of the Berlin Wall, now covered in murals created by artists from around the world shortly after the wall's fall. The images range from political commentary to celebrations of freedom. With Dmitry Vrubel's Fraternal Kiss, depicting the socialist greeting between Soviet leader Brezhnev and East German leader Honecker, becoming one of the most iconic. Walking the 1.3-kilometer stretch along Mühlenstrasse, the Spree River flows on one side while the painted concrete sections stand on the other, a reminder that this barrier once divided a city and split families. The neighborhoods themselves provide Berlin's greatest fascination. Kreuzberg pulses with Turkish markets, street art, and a countercultural legacy from its days as a refuge for those avoiding military service. Prenzlauer Berg's leafy streets contain restored 19th-century buildings now filled with cafes and boutiques, though longtime residents lament the gentrification that has transformed formerly gritty eastern districts. Charlottenburg maintains its western elegance, with the Kurfürstendamm Boulevard lined by department stores, and the bombed shell of Kaiser Wilhelm Memorial Church standing as a war memorial beside its modern replacement. The Reichstag building demonstrates architectural adaptation across political eras. Built in 1894 to house the Imperial Parliament, it burned in 1933 in an event the Nazis used to consolidate power. After reunification, Norman Foster's renovation added the glass dome through which visitors can ascend a spiral ramp overlooking the parliamentary chamber below, a literal transparency meant to symbolize democratic government. Reservations are required, but free, and ascending at sunset provides views across Berlin's rooftops as light fades. Berlin's cafe culture supports long afternoons spent reading or conversing over coffee and cake. The traditional Konditorei still exists alongside specialty coffee shops, with Charlottenburg's Princess Cheesecake or Mieti's The Barn representing different approaches to Berlin's food scene. Sunday brunch has become nearly mandatory, with neighborhood spots serving elaborate spreads from late morning into afternoon. The Black Forest region in southwestern Germany presents yet another face of the country's geographic diversity. Dense coniferous forests blanket mountains that roll rather than soar, creating landscapes of deep green valleys interrupted by traditional farmhouses with enormous sloping roofs designed to shed heavy snow. The region's name derives from the dark canopy that Roman travelers observed. And though logging and tourism have modified the primeval character, substantial forests remain. Wandering through Black Forest villages means encountering timepieces everywhere because this region birthed the cuckoo clock industry centuries ago. Small workshops still craft these intricate mechanisms, and shops display everything from modest traditional designs to elaborate creations featuring entire villages complete with moving figurines. The mechanical ingenuity required for these clocks reflects the precision mindset that characterizes German craftsmanship across industries. Triberg Falls cascades down 7 tiers through the forest, accessible via walking paths that wind alongside the rushing water. The trails offer viewing platforms at different elevations, each perspective revealing new aspects of how the water plunges through mossy rock formations surrounded by towering firs and spruces. During winter months, portions of the falls freeze into dramatic ice sculptures, while water continues flowing behind the frozen facade. Black Forest cake originated here, though the authentic version differs substantially from international interpretations. Layers of chocolate sponge soaked in Kirschwasser cherry brandy alternate with whipped cream and cherries, the entire creation topped with chocolate shavings and more cherries. Local bakeries guard their particular recipes while maintaining the essential elements that define this regional specialty. Titisee and Schlucksee rank among the most visited lakes, their glacial origins creating clear waters surrounded by forested slopes. During summer, the lake shores fill with swimmers, sailors, and paddleboarders taking advantage of the pristine conditions. Winter transforms the same landscapes into cross-country skiing territory, with trails cutting through silent forests where snow muffles all sound except the swish of skis. The spa town of Baden-Baden sits at the northwestern edge of the Black Forest, where thermal springs have drawn visitors since Roman times. Grand Belle Époque architecture lines streets where wealthy Europeans once gathered to take the waters and gamble in ornate casinos. The Friedrichsbad Spa maintains century-old bathing traditions, guiding visitors through a sequence of rooms with varying temperatures and bathing styles based on Roman and Irish practices. Moving eastward toward Bavaria, the landscape shifts again as the Bavarian forest stretches along the border with the Czech Republic. This represents Germany's largest continuous forest area, protected within a national park where ecological succession proceeds without human interference. Dead trees stand as silvery monuments among new growth, demonstrating nature's cycles in areas where forest management takes a hands-off approach. The Bavarian forest transitions into the foothills approaching the Alps, where rolling agricultural land gradually gives way to more dramatic topography. Traditional Bavarian villages display the distinctive architectural style of the region, with painted facades, wooden balconies dripping with geraniums, and onion-domed church towers that serve as visual anchors across rural landscapes. So Garmisch-Partenkirchen occupies a particularly stunning position at the base of the Zugspitze, Germany's highest peak at nearly 3,000 meters. The town hosted the Winter Olympics decades ago, and ski jumping towers still punctuate the skyline as reminders of that heritage. Cable cars transport visitors to the summit, where German, Austrian, and Italian alpine peaks stretch to distant horizons, the curvature of the earth becoming visible on clear days. The Partnach Gorge near Garmisch offers a completely different mountain experience, with a walking path carved through a narrow canyon where the Partnach River thunders over boulders far below. In places, the gorge walls rise so steeply and close together that only a sliver of sky remains visible overhead. So water spray creates perpetual mist that nourishes mosses and ferns clinging to rock faces, while in winter, ice formations transform the gorge into a frozen wonderland. Oberammergau gained worldwide recognition for its passion play, performed every 10 years by villagers as a tradition dating to the 17th century when plague survivors pledged to present the play in gratitude for being spared. Between performances, the village maintains its reputation for wood carving, with artisans creating everything from religious statuary to Christmas ornaments in workshops passed through families for generations. The village also showcases Lüftelmalerei, the distinctive Bavarian tradition of painting elaborate frescoes on building facades. Entire walls display scenes from fairy tales, religious narratives, or local history, transforming ordinary structures into outdoor art galleries. The painted illusions sometimes include false architectural elements like columns, windows, or balconies that appear three-dimensional from certain angles. The German Alpine Road winds through this mountain territory, connecting Lindau on Lake Constance with Berchtesgaden near the Austrian border. The route passes countless opportunities for exploration, from medieval castles perched on rocky outcrops to pristine mountain lakes reflecting surrounding peaks. Small roads branch off the main route, leading to isolated valleys where traditional farming practices continue much as they have for centuries. Berchtesgaden occupies a peculiar geographic position, surrounded on three sides by Austrian territory in a mountainous enclave of exceptional beauty. The Königssee, a fjord-like lake enclosed by vertical rock walls, exemplifies the dramatic scenery. Electric boats ferry passengers across waters so clear and still that perfect reflections of the mountains create disorienting mirror effects. The boat operators traditionally demonstrate the lake's acoustic properties by playing a trumpet, the notes echoing multiple times off the surrounding cliffs. The St. Bartholomew's Church sits on a peninsula jutting into the Königssee, its distinctive red onion domes providing the only human-made structure visible from most vantage points around the lake. Pilgrims have visited this church for centuries, though today's visitors arrive more frequently seeking photographic opportunities than religious experiences. The building's isolation and dramatic mountain backdrop create compositions that have graced countless postcards and promotional materials. Above Berchtesgaden, the Kehlsteinhaus occupies an improbable position atop a rocky summit accessible only by a mountain road carved through solid rock and a brass-lined elevator built directly into the mountain. The structure's construction as a diplomatic meeting place involved remarkable engineering achievements, though its historical associations remain controversial. Today's visitors focus primarily on the panoramic alpine views available from the terrace, where peaks march toward horizons in every direction. The Watzmann Massif dominates the Berchtesgaden landscape, its east face presenting one of the highest rock walls in the Eastern Alps. Serious mountaineers attempt its challenging routes, while more casual hikers explore lower elevation trails, offering perspectives on the mountain's imposing bulk. Local legends attach personalities to the Watzmann and surrounding peaks, stories explaining the mountain's formation through tales of cruel kings turned to stone. Returning northward into central Bavaria, the landscape moderates into the rolling hills and farmland surrounding Munich. The city began as a monastery settlement beside the Isar River, eventually growing into Bavaria's capital and Germany's third largest city. Unlike Berlin's raw energy or Hamburg's maritime character, Munich projects prosperity and tradition in equal measure. Marienplatz forms Munich's social and geographic center, hides with the new town hall's neo-Gothic facade dominating one entire side of the square. The Glockenspiel embedded in the tower performs twice daily, mechanical figures reenacting historical events as tourists crane their necks and cameras click. The square functions as Munich's living room, where locals meet friends, where protests gather, where celebrations spontaneously erupt after football victories. The Viktualienmarkt spreads adjacent to Marienplatz, a permanent open-air market where vendors have sold flowers, produce, meat, and cheese since the early 19th century. Traditional market women still operate some stalls, their knowledge spanning decades of selecting the finest products. The market's beer garden draws locals during lunch hours, office workers gathering at communal tables for sausages, radishes, and beer under chestnut trees. Munich's relationship with beer permeates the city's culture more thoroughly than perhaps anywhere else on Earth. Beer gardens occupy parks throughout the city, following the tradition that began when brewers planted chestnut trees above their underground storage cellars, the shade keeping the beer cool. The custom evolved that brewers could sell beer from these locations, creating outdoor gathering spaces now considered essential components of Munich life. The Hofbräuhaus represents Munich's most famous beer hall, though locals tend to frequent less touristy establishments. The vast main hall accommodates over 1,000 people at long wooden tables, a brass band playing from an upper gallery, while servers in traditional dress navigate the chaos carrying impossible numbers of beer steins. The atmosphere reaches peak intensity during Oktoberfest season, though the hall maintains considerable energy year-round. Oktoberfest itself transforms Munich every autumn when massive beer tents rise on the Theresienwiese fairgrounds. Each major brewery operates a tent accommodating thousands of revelers, brass bands competing across the grounds, while servers deliver beer by the liter and roasted chickens by the thousands. The festival originated from royal wedding celebrations in the early 19th century, evolving into the world's largest folk festival, attracting millions of visitors. Beyond beer culture, Munich offers substantial cultural attractions, including world-class museums clustered in the Kunstareal district. The Alte Pinakothek displays European masterworks from the 14th through 18th centuries, and with exceptional strength in German Renaissance and Flemish Baroque paintings. Across the street, the Neue Pinakothek covers European art from the late 18th through early 20th centuries, while the Pinakothek der Moderne addresses contemporary and design collections. The Deutsches Museum occupies an island in the Isar River, its sprawling exhibition spaces covering virtually every aspect of science and technology. Full-size aircraft suspend from ceilings above reconstructed mine shafts descending underground. Interactive demonstrations allow visitors to generate electricity, observe chemical reactions, or explore astronomical phenomena. The breadth and depth of collections rival any science museum worldwide. Munich's English Garden extends for several kilometers along the Isar, one of Europe's largest urban parks. And the park's name references the naturalistic landscaping style rather than any British connection. Chinese Tower Beer Garden occupies the park's heart, while designated nude sunbathing areas reflect Munich's relaxed attitudes. Most surprisingly, standing waves in the Eisbach stream attract surfers year-round despite frigid water temperatures and the landlocked location. The Olympic Park, developed for the 1972 Summer Games, remains actively used, its distinctive tent-like roof structures now considered architectural landmarks. The Olympic Tower offers observation decks with city views, while the stadium hosts concerts and sporting events. The park's extensive grounds provide recreational space where Munichers jog, cycle, and picnic against backgrounds of innovative architecture. Nymphenburg Palace sprawls across western Munich, a Baroque complex where Bavarian royalty spent summers escaping city heat. The main palace extends symmetrically with side wings, while elaborate formal gardens transition into naturalistic parkland. The Marstall Museum displays ornate royal carriages and sleighs, gilded confections demonstrating the ceremonial importance of transportation for European nobility. Smaller hunting lodges dot Nymphenburg's park, each a jewel box of Rococo decoration. The Amalienburg Pavilion particularly dazzles with its hall of mirrors, where curved surfaces multiply reflections infinitely, while silver stucco work creates effects of impossible delicacy. These intimate spaces contrast sharply with the main palace's formal grandeur, revealing different facets of aristocratic life. Dachau sits on Munich's northern outskirts, a medieval town whose name became synonymous with Nazi concentration camps. The memorial site occupies the former campgrounds, preserved bunkers, and reconstructed barracks documenting the suffering of prisoners held there. The experience proves profoundly unsettling, yet essential for understanding 20th century German history and the importance of remembering atrocities to prevent repetition. The contrast between Dachau's horrors and Bavaria's picturesque scenery creates cognitive dissonance that nonetheless reflects historical reality. These contradictions characterize Germany broadly, beautiful landscapes and cultural achievements existing alongside the necessity of confronting the darkest chapters of national history. German society's willingness to address this past openly distinguishes it from nations where historical crimes receive less acknowledgement. Augsburg lies west of Munich, one of Germany's oldest cities, with origins in the Roman settlement of Augusta Vindelicorum. During the Renaissance, the Fugger banking family operated from Augsburg, their financial empire funding emperors and popes while accumulating legendary wealth. The Fuggerei, a walled complex of almshouses established in the 16th century, still provides housing for Augsburg's poor at an annual rent frozen for centuries at less than €1. The Fuggerei's cobbled lanes and small apartments preserve Renaissance social welfare concepts, residents still expected to pray daily for the founder's soul as part of their tenancy agreement. Walking these lanes feels like stepping backward through time, the outside world's noise fading behind walls that have sheltered generations of Augsburgers. The nominal rent makes this possibly history's greatest real estate bargain. Augsburg's town hall features the Golden Hall, a restored Renaissance chamber that ranks among Germany's finest secular interiors. The hall's proportions and decoration demonstrate the wealth and ambition of Renaissance merchant cities competing for prestige. Wartime bombing heavily damaged the hall, but meticulous restoration returned it to former glory, the coffered ceiling and wall paintings recreated from photographs and fragments. Moving northward through Swabia, the Danube River marks a geographic and cultural transition zone. South Europe's second-longest river begins in the Black Forest as mountain streams, gathering size and momentum as it flows eastward across the continent toward the Black Sea. The German sections showcase varied characters from wild gorges to industrial corridors to agricultural plains. The Danube Gorge between Sigmaringen and Büron cuts through limestone plateaus, vertical cliffs rising hundreds of meters above the river. Castles perch on seemingly impossible positions, their foundations merging with natural rock formations. This section remains relatively undeveloped, offering glimpses of how the river appeared before engineering projects tamed its most dramatic characteristics. Ulm's Gothic minster boasts the world's tallest church spire, a stone needle soaring over 160 meters above the city. See, climbing the tower's hundreds of steps rewards persistent visitors with views extending across Swabia to the Alps on clear days. The church's construction spanned centuries, its completion only achieved in the 19th century despite medieval origins. The city straddling the Danube also claims Albert Einstein as a native son, though his family relocated during his infancy. A fountain in the city depicts Einstein sticking out his tongue, recreating his famous photograph in sculpture. The surrounding Old Town recovered from wartime destruction through careful reconstruction, half-timbered houses once again lining streets where medieval merchants traded. The Swabian Alps extend south of the Danube, a plateau region featuring limestone caves and unique geological formations. The Blautopf near Blaubeuren presents an unnaturally blue spring where underground rivers surface, the water's color resulting from light scattering off limestone particles. Local legends claimed a beautiful water nymph caused the blue color through her tears, the story inspiring romantic poetry and artwork. Stuttgart occupies a bowl-shaped valley further west, its reputation built on automotive manufacturing rather than tourist attractions. Mercedes-Benz and Porsche both maintain museums chronicling automotive history and showcasing future concepts. The Mercedes Museum's building itself impresses through its innovative architecture, a double helix interior structure creating a continuous path descending through automotive evolution. The Swabian character supposedly emphasizes frugality and hard work, stereotypes that persist in German regional humor. Swabian cuisine reflects these values, featuring simple but hearty dishes like spätzle egg noodles and Maltaschen stuffed pasta pockets. The region's wine growers produce wines rarely exported, whites and reds consumed locally from steep hillside vineyards surrounding the Neckar River. The Neckar flows through Heidelberg, perhaps Germany's most romantically situated university town. The castle ruins overlook the old town from their hillside position, red sandstone walls glowing warmly in evening light. The combination of romantic ruins, the river, and prestigious university has attracted artists and writers for centuries, creating an idealized image that persists despite heavy tourist traffic. Heidelberg's castle achieved its ruined state through French military action in the 17th century, though the destruction contributed to its romantic appeal. The enormous wine barrel in the castle cellars demonstrates Baroque excess, a container built to hold over 200,000 liters. Tours emphasize the castle's history, while visitors on the terraces photograph the old bridge and town stretching along the riverbank below. The Philosophenweg, or Philosopher's Way, follows the opposite hillside with views back toward the castle and Old Town. University professors and students supposedly walked this path while debating philosophical questions, though today's visitors more often seek photographic vantage points than intellectual discourse. And the microclimate on this south-facing slope supports plants typically found in warmer regions, creating a botanical oddity in southwestern Germany. Frankfurt stands as Germany's financial capital, its skyline dominated by bank towers earning it the nickname Manhattan. The European Central Bank occupies a distinctive twin-tower complex, while the trade fair grounds host specialized exhibitions attracting international business travelers. Despite corporate dominance, Frankfurt maintains cultural significance through museums concentrated along the main river's south bank. The Museumsufer, or Museum Embankment, presents world-class collections covering art, architecture, film, and ethnography within walking distance of each other. The Stadel Museum's collection spans 7 centuries of European art, particularly strong in German Renaissance and 19th century works. Museum architecture displays building models and drawings documenting architectural evolution, while the German Film Museum explores cinema history through interactive exhibits. Frankfurt's Römerberg preserves the reconstructed medieval heart, half-timbered buildings surrounding the square, creating postcard scenes despite their modern construction. The buildings recreate structures destroyed during wartime, architectural copies that provoke ongoing debates about authenticity and historical preservation. Nevertheless, they provide visual connection to Frankfurt's past as a free imperial city and coronation site for Holy Roman emperors. The main river flows through Frankfurt before joining the Rhine, Germany's most significant waterway. And the Rhine has shaped European history, commerce, and culture for millennia, its strategic importance leading to countless castles, fortifications, and settlements along its banks. The river rises in Swiss Alps, gathers strength through Lake Constance, then flows northward through Germany toward the North Sea. The upper Middle Rhine Valley between Koblenz and Bingen achieves such concentrated scenic and historical significance that UNESCO designated it a World Heritage Site. Castles appear every few kilometers, perched on rocky outcrops or commanding strategic positions. Vineyards blanket impossibly steep slopes, workers tending vines where mechanization proves impossible. Small towns cluster along narrow riverbanks, their growth constrained by geography. The Lorelei Rock marks the Rhine's narrowest point, a slate cliff associated with legendary sirens whose songs lured sailors to destruction. The rock's echo and the river's dangerous currents at this constriction provided factual basis for supernatural explanations. Today, tourist boats pass safely while passengers photograph the rock and listen to Heinrich Heine's poem set to. Rhine cruises represent popular ways to experience the valley, ships departing from multiple ports for journeys ranging from hours to days. Traveling by water provides continuous scenery without navigation concerns, castle following castle, while commentary explains historical and geographical features. Evening departures during summer may include illuminated castle programs, fireworks, and colored lights transforming the valley into fairyland. Cologne marks the Rhine's northern transition into industrial lowlands, though the city's Gothic cathedral dominates the riverside skyline. The Dom's twin spires rise over 150 meters, their blackened stone creating dramatic contrast against the sky. Medieval builders labored for centuries on the cathedral without completing it. The towers only finished in the 19th century following original Gothic plans. The cathedral's interior impresses through sheer volume, vast stone columns supporting vaults that soar overhead. The Shrine of the Three Kings supposedly contains relics of the biblical Magi, making Cologne a pilgrimage destination throughout the Middle Ages. Stained glass windows include both medieval originals and contemporary installations. See a modern window by Gerhard Richter introducing abstract patterns of colored pixels into Gothic surroundings. Cologne's location and transportation connections made it strategic during wartime, resulting in devastating aerial bombardment. The cathedral survived largely intact, while the surrounding city was reduced to rubble. Photos from 1945 showing the Gothic spires rising from moonscapes of destruction. Reconstruction proceeded gradually, blending modern and historical architecture in ways that provoke debate about urban planning and historical preservation. The Rhine continues northward through Germany's industrial heartland before crossing into the Netherlands, its mouth eventually reaching the North Sea. The river connects Switzerland, France, Germany, and the Netherlands. It is serving as transportation corridor and political boundary. Its importance to European development cannot be overstated, though environmental challenges from pollution and engineering projects now require international cooperation. Germany's northwest presents yet another distinct landscape in Lower Saxony and Schleswig-Holstein, where proximity to the North and Baltic Seas creates maritime climates and cultures. The Wadden Sea extends along the coast, vast tidal flats that drain during low tide to expose mudflats stretching to horizons. This unique ecosystem supports millions of migratory birds while providing shellfish harvests. Bremen maintains traditions as a Hanseatic trading city, its medieval prosperity visible in the ornate facades surrounding the market square. The town hall demonstrates Weser Renaissance architecture, shared elaborate decoration covering surfaces, while a statue of the knight Roland symbolizes market rights and freedom. The Bremen Townian statue depicts the grim fairy tale characters, now one of Germany's most photographed sculptures. Hamburg's port status made it Germany's gateway to the world. Wealth from maritime trade funding, elaborate buildings, and cultural institutions. The city's Speicherstadt warehouse district features red brick buildings crossing canals, the waterfront architecture creating atmospheric scenes, especially when illuminated at night. These historic warehouses now house museums, restaurants, and offices, adaptive reuse preserving the district's character while supporting contemporary uses. The Elbphilharmonie Concert Hall crowns a converted warehouse at the Speicherstadt's edge, its modern glass structure appearing to float above brick foundations. The building's wave-like roofline references Hamburg's maritime heritage while housing world-class acoustics within. Public viewing platforms offer harbor panoramas, the building functioning as civic space beyond its primary concert hall purpose. Hamburg's Reeperbahn Entertainment District projects a grittier character, neon signs advertising bars, clubs, and adult entertainment along streets where the Beatles performed in dive bars before achieving fame. The district's working-class maritime roots persist despite gentrification pressures, creating neighborhoods where alternative culture coexists with increasing prosperity. The Baltic Sea coast presents gentler shorelines than the North Sea's tidal extremes, long sandy beaches backed by dunes and resort architecture. Lübeck served as the Hanseatic League's capital, its old town occupying an island in the Trave River. Medieval churches, merchants' houses, and the iconic Holsten Gate remain, brick Gothic architecture creating harmonious streetscapes that earned World Heritage designation. Rügen Island in the Baltic features dramatic chalk cliffs rising white against blue sea and green beach forests, landscapes that inspired Romantic painter Caspar David Friedrich. Seaside resorts developed during the 19th century when Baltic bathing became fashionable, ornate spa architecture lining promenades. The island's varied scenery includes beaches, fishing villages, and nature reserves protecting coastal ecosystems. This journey through Germany's regions demonstrates the extraordinary diversity contained within one nation's boundaries. Alpine peaks transition to rolling hills, dense forests give way to river valleys, medieval towns sit alongside modern metropolises. Each region maintains distinct identity through dialect, cuisine, architecture, and traditions, yet all contribute to the complex whole that comprises contemporary Germany. Understanding Germany requires moving beyond simple stereotypes or singular images. The country encompasses contradictions, history both glorious and shameful, landscapes varied as any in Europe, cities expressing different visions of urban life, from Baltic shores to Alpine summits, from Frankfurt's glass towers to Rothenburg's medieval walls, from Black Forest trails to Berlin's pulsing nightlife. A Germany rewards exploration with endless discoveries and deeper appreciation for how geography, history, and culture interweave to create places of meaning and beauty.